Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You're listening to Daily C1 English Vocabulary. My name is Emma.
And my name is Tom.
Today, we're exploring 10 powerful words and expressions that will help you talk about challenges, decisions, and resilience. Themes that come up constantly in both personal conversations and professional settings.
We'll break down their meanings, show you exactly when to use them, and help you understand the subtle differences that make each word unique.
Let's dive in. Our first word is inclination, a noun that actually has three distinct meanings, and it's helpful to start with the most literal one, a slope or an angle.
For example, the road had a steep inclination, making it difficult to climb in winter conditions. Or, the solar panels were installed at a 30-degree inclination to capture the most sunlight. The second meaning is a natural tendency or talent. For example, he showed an early inclination for music. By age 5, he could play by ear. Or, I've always had an inclination toward creative work rather than management.
Compared to preference, inclination suggests something deeper and more instinctive, not just a choice, but a natural pull.
The third meaning is a desire or preference. For example, she had no inclination to join the party. She preferred to spend the evening working on her project. Or, my natural inclination was to say no, but I decided to give the project a chance.
Compared to desire, an inclination is much weaker and more subtle. Desire is a strong feeling, a want, that often drives you to action. An inclination is more like a slight lean. For example, if you say, I have an inclination to stay home tonight, it doesn't mean you have a burning passion to sit on the couch. It just means that, if you had to choose, your mind is leaning slightly more towards staying in than going out.
In daily speech, native speakers often use the adjective inclined instead of the noun. For example, instead of saying, I have an inclination to agree, they say, I'm inclined to agree. Just as a physical slope leans one way, a person with an inclination naturally leans toward certain choices or interests.
Now let's move to a word that describes when things go spectacularly wrong. Debacle. This noun means a complete failure or disaster, often one that's chaotic and hard to hide, sometimes embarrassing or humiliating. It's not just any failure, it's a dramatic mess where things fall apart. For example, the product launch turned into a complete debacle when the technology failed in front of hundreds of investors.
Debacle is the word you reach for when describing situations that didn't just fail, but failed in a particularly chaotic way. The company event became a debacle when the restaurant lost the reservation, the presentation file wouldn't open, and half the guests got stuck in traffic. Another example, the company's social media campaign was such a debacle that the CEO had to issue a public apology. This word is moderately formal and often appears in news, articles, or business contexts. The election debate turned into a debacle, with the candidates interrupting each other constantly.
Compared to a simple failure, a debacle emphasizes that things didn't just go wrong. They fell apart spectacularly, often in a way that becomes widely visible. While it's very similar to fiasco, debacle often carries a slightly heavier, more serious tone. Historically, the word comes from French and originally referred to the breaking up of ice on a river, a chaotic collapse that can cause damage downstream.
After a debacle, you might need to scrutinize what went wrong. Our next verb. To scrutinize means to examine something very carefully and critically, paying close attention to every detail. It's more than just looking. It's investigating thoroughly, often with a critical eye. For example, after the financial debacle, auditors began to scrutinize every transaction from the past year. Scrutinize is incredibly useful in professional and academic contexts when you want to describe careful, detailed examination. Before signing the contract, her lawyer scrutinized every clause to ensure there were no hidden problems. Another example, the committee will scrutinize all applications before making their final decision.
The noun form is scrutiny. The new policy came under intense scrutiny from journalists and the public. This word works in both formal and informal contexts, though it carries a sense of thoroughness and often suspicion. The key is that scrutinize suggests you're looking carefully because something matters, or because you're searching for problems.
She scrutinized the ingredient labels at the grocery store to avoid allergens. This works perfectly because there's a specific reason for the careful examination. But I scrutinized the menu at the restaurant. Sounds odd if you're just casually deciding what to eat.
Compared to examine or inspect, scrutinize suggests much more intensity and often implies looking for problems or hidden details. While examine is neutral, scrutinize implies you're looking for problems, inconsistencies, or hidden details. It's also stronger than review. When you scrutinize something, you're not just reading it over, you're dissecting it carefully.
Now let's move to a verb that perfectly captures the process of gradual collapse. Crumble. To crumble means to break into small pieces or fragments, or to gradually fall apart and collapse. It can be literal. The cookie crumbled in his hand, or figurative. Her confidence crumbled after the harsh criticism.
The figurative meaning is especially powerful. For example, his carefully constructed alibi crumbled under scrutiny when investigators found contradictory evidence. Or, the peace agreement crumbled within weeks as both sides resumed fighting.
Crumble beautifully captures that sense of gradual, unstoppable deterioration. The company's reputation crumbled after the scandal became public.
This word works in both formal and informal contexts. And there's an interesting informal idiom connected to this word. That's the way the cookie crumbles. This expression means that's just how things happen, or that's life, used when accepting something unfortunate or disappointing that you can't control. For example, I didn't get the promotion, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. I'll try again next year. Or, we were hoping for good weather for the outdoor event, but it rained. Oh well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. It's a casual, slightly humorous way to accept disappointment with a philosophical attitude.
After things crumble, you need someone competent to help rebuild. Competent means having the necessary skill, knowledge, or ability to do something successfully. It's not about being brilliant or exceptional, it's about being reliably capable and qualified. For example, we need a competent manager who can handle the day-to-day operations without constant supervision.
Competent is extremely useful in professional contexts because it describes that solid, dependable level of ability. She's a competent graphic designer. She may not win awards, but she consistently delivers good work on time. Another example, the lawyer assured them that any competent accountant could handle their tax situation. You'll often hear it with words like fully, highly, or perfectly. He's perfectly competent at his job, even if he's not the most creative person on the team.
The noun form is competence. The interview will assess your competence in several key areas. Compared to skilled or talented, competent is less impressive. It suggests adequacy rather than excellence. He's competent means he can do it, while he's skilled means he does it well. Compared to qualified, competent emphasizes actual ability rather than just having the right credentials. You can be qualified on paper, but not actually competent in practice.
But when someone truly incompetent handles an important situation, the results can be devastating. Devastating means causing severe shock, distress, or destruction, something that completely overwhelms or ruins something. It's one of the strongest words you can use to describe negative impact. For example, the hurricane had a devastating effect on the coastal communities, destroying homes and infrastructure.
Devastating works in both literal and emotional contexts. Literal, the wildfire was devastating. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash. Emotional. Receiving that rejection letter was devastating. She'd worked toward that goal for years. You'll often hear devastating with words like effect, impact, consequences, or news. The audit revealed devastating financial losses that threatened the company's survival. This word is powerful and should be reserved for truly serious situations. Using it for minor inconveniences sounds melodramatic.
Compared to terrible or bad, devastating is far more intense and emotional. Compared to catastrophic, devastating emphasizes the emotional impact and shock, while catastrophic focuses more on the scale of physical destruction. When devastating situations occur, problems often get worse progressively.
Progressively means gradually, in stages, or increasingly over time. It describes something that happens step by step, becoming more advanced or more intense as time passes. For example, the patient's condition became progressively worse throughout the night. Or, the software updates became progressively more complex, requiring more training for users. Another example, as the project deadline approached, the team grew progressively more stressed.
You'll frequently see it with comparative adjectives: progressively worse, progressively better, progressively more difficult, progressively larger. The hills became progressively steeper as we climbed toward the summit. This word is quite formal and appears often in academic writing, reports, and professional discussions. Compared to gradually or increasingly, progressively emphasizes the step-by-step nature of the change. Gradually suggests smooth, continuous change, while progressively suggests distinct stages or levels. Increasingly just means more and more, but progressively adds the sense of moving through progressive stages.
In contrast to the measured pace of progressively, sometimes we act frantically. Our next adverb. Frantically means in a hurried, anxious, or desperate way, often because of panic or extreme urgency. It describes wild, uncontrolled activity driven by fear or desperation. For example, when she realized her passport was missing an hour before her flight, she began frantically searching through her bags.
Frantically perfectly captures that sense of panicked, chaotic action. The crew worked frantically to repair the leak before the ship took on more water. She frantically waved at the departing train, but it didn't stop. This word is neutral in formality. It works in both casual conversation and formal writing. Compared to quickly or hurriedly, frantically adds emotional intensity. It suggests panic and desperation, not just speed.
Sometimes you want to help someone who's acting frantically, but your hands are tied. Our next expression. This idiom means you're unable to help or act, even though you might want to, because rules, circumstances, or external factors prevent you. It's a diplomatic way to explain why you can't do something without sounding unwilling or unhelpful. For example, I'd love to give you a refund, but my hands are tied. Company policy doesn't allow returns after 30 days.
This expression is incredibly useful in professional situations when you need to say no while maintaining goodwill. I understand your frustration, but my hands are tied until I receive approval from upper management. It's more diplomatic than simply saying I can't, because it shifts the blame to external circumstances rather than personal unwillingness. Compared to it's out of my control or there's nothing I can do, hands are tied is more colorful and empathetic. It suggests you're frustrated by the limitation too.
And finally, let's end with an inspiring expression, rise from the ashes. This powerful phrase means to recover and become successful again after a disaster, defeat, or period of failure. It comes from the mythological phoenix, a bird that burns to death and is reborn from its own ashes. For example, after the devastating bankruptcy, the entrepreneur rose from the ashes and built an even more successful company.
This expression is perfect for inspirational contexts, stories of comeback, resilience, and transformation. The city rose from the ashes after the earthquake, rebuilding stronger and more beautiful than before. Another example, her career seemed over after the scandal, but she rose from the ashes with a best-selling memoir about her experiences. Or, the team rose from the ashes of a terrible season to win the championship the following year.
It's not for minor setbacks. You wouldn't say, I rose from the ashes after failing one test. It's for significant comebacks after major failures or disasters. Compared to recover or bounce back, rise from the ashes is much more dramatic and poetic. It emphasizes total destruction followed by remarkable rebirth.
So there you have it, 10 powerful words and expressions that will help you discuss challenges, failures, and resilience with confidence and nuance. From describing your inclinations and examining debacles, to scrutinizing what went wrong and watching things crumble. From seeking competent help and describing devastating impacts, to understanding how things worsen progressively or how we react frantically. And finally, knowing when your hands are tied but believing you can always rise from the ashes. These words will make your English more precise, more sophisticated, and more emotionally powerful.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this episode gives you the tools to express yourself with greater clarity and impact. Until next time, take care and keep learning.
Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.